Hello, this is another Indy Evernym sprint demo. We're going to put that in quotes today. Today we're giving a project update. We expect this call to be shorter than usual, this video. We have done pretty good at posting a video every 2 weeks for the past 2 years, and we don't want to break that habit now. However, we don't have anything to demo today. We just want to give people an update about what's been going on and where things are at with the project. So let's actually start with the Indy node side. In the last sprint demo, we discussed a tool we created for testing the ZMQ connections work. And we got some feedback on the use of that tool by our Evernym's customer support team, customer success team. And we want to simplify it, make it so it can talk to the Indy pool to verify connections, make it statically linked so we can make it easy to install. You'll see those changes happening. They're pretty close to done. Over the last 2 months, we've talked a lot about rich schemas. Rich schemas is the effort to change Indy encodings so that change Indy credentials, schema definitions and credential definitions so that you can be clear about how attributes are encoded. This is an integer, this is a date, this is a list, that kind of thing. But at the same time, we want to move to support all the new capabilities of W3C compliant verifiable credentials. That standard was formalized last year, late last year. And that includes proof presentations and mapping between encodings and schemas and proof presentations. That'll be really useful. So we've been making good progress on that. Most of that progress has been done in Aries hypes and in Aries RFCs and Indy hypes. Alex, can you describe a little bit more the work you've been doing in those hypes and RFCs?
Yes, sure. So if you look at the Indy hypes and Aries RFCs, you may already notice there is a bunch of RFCs describing the essence of a rich schema feature, why it's needed. So that's what Richard mentioned already. Also, last sprint, I believe we finished the so-called Indy Common hype and RFC, which describes the generic common functionality shared between all rich schema objects, because they have a lot of similar things in terms of how they're stored on the ledger, what API is used to get them, to build necessary transactions, and so on. But this is pretty important RFC because it covers most of things which are there. And of course, in addition to some common part, we may have some differences. We need real examples of every rich schema object. And that's the work that's being done in the scope of 2337. Before this, we already had a couple of RFCs and hypes dedicated in particular to the JSON-LD context and the rich schema object itself. And now we've been working on updating these RFCs to reflect the recent changes in the common hype, and also to provide specific details about new objects such as encoding, mapping, credential definition, and so on. And the second ticket 2347 is about how we're going to transform the format of our credential to reflect the W3C format. So that's one of the goals of rich schema functionalities which I mentioned, is to be compatible with W3C work in terms of how credential looks like and how presentation looks like, just to leverage this interoperability. So this is what the current work is about. I'd also like to mention that in general, we consider the work on the ledger side, on Indy node side related to rich schema is done for our first version, first MVP of rich schemas. We already have a general code which allows to store all of rich schema objects on the ledger and get them from the state, reference them. So now what we've been doing, we're finalizing these RFCs and hypes, and we are going to start implementation on Indy SDK side, in particular on Indy Credex and Indy VDR.
Thank you, Alex. And this has been really exciting because we're working hand in hand with the team at the Sovrin Foundation, other contributors as well from Kiva and British Columbia, IBM. We're working on this together, which is really fun. It does mean that our specific work is a bit more chaotic. It's hard to say, hey, we're going to work on this issue this week, because probably we're going to spend much of this week helping somebody else do their part of the project. So you're going to see less of that reflected in Jira, less of that reflected in our sprint demo videos, and much more of that in GitHub pull requests with somebody else's name on it where we are assisting. So I've specifically been trying to make sure that Alex is not too burdened with assigned work so that he has time to provide that architectural guidance to the project as a whole. And I should tell you, Alex, that I did get feedback from Ken at the Sovrin Foundation. He thinks that your involvement has really improved the way that project's gone. So thank you for that. Anybody who's watched our sprint demo videos over the past 2 years has seen that 2019, we got a lot of stuff done. We fixed a lot of really big things in the ledger, shipped a lot of new improvements that we're really happy with. 2020, we're much more worried about adoption. We're much more worried about making sure people are using the ledger and we can evaluate what the next thing is. We're not going to just start throwing things in the ledger. We know we have to do rich schemas. We know we have to do the new approach to revocation that Mike Lauder came up with at the Sovrin Foundation. But beyond that, we don't think we're going to do anything on the ledger. We're just going to sit back and see how people adopt it and what new things are required. That's a great time for us to retool. So as you can see, Sergey K on our team, he really enjoys doing consensus research, looking at different implementations. There's a number of these where you'll see a number of issues in our backlog where he's looked at Libra hot stuff, he's looked at Stellar, he's looked at Tendermint. He's just taking a view of the industry as a whole. We want to make sure we understand what best practices are. Plenum, which is the consensus layer in Indy, has been around for 2 years now. There's a lot of new stuff out there.
I think almost 3 years.
Yeah. Almost 3 years, even longer. At Hyperledger Global Forum, IBM talked about Mirror BFT, which is a new approach that we weren't aware of. We're going to take some time to research these and figure out what learnings we can take away and how we should evolve Indy to take advantage of the latest research. And you can see Sergey K's face here. I've told him he needs to write this up. We definitely, you'll see in the playlist that we have a recent video we posted on troubleshooting the Indy network. That'd make a great blog post. Of course, a bunch of this research into consensus protocols would make a great blog post, a series of blog posts. We want to spend more time writing down the things we learn and making sure they benefit the community. So you see that. Going forward, like I mentioned, we don't have a lot of clear work. A lot of clear tasks we need to do. We are continuing to work with Kiva to remove Indy crypto and put Ursa in. We believe we're finally unblocked on that. The Ursa packages are being built correctly. We also do recognize we need to upgrade Indy node to run on Ubuntu 20.04. We're going to get that done in the next little while. I don't know if it's the next 2 weeks, but in the next little while. 20.04 is in alpha right now, moves to beta in the next week or two. Besides that, it's just rich schemas, and it's hard to tell at this point in time which of these tasks we're going to do and which tasks we're going to help somebody else do and which tasks somebody else is going to do. So expect to see that evolve over time. Now, one other note about what we've done the last 2 weeks is that we had some holidays, we had some illnesses, we had some vacations, but we also attended the Hyperledger Global Forum. And all the videos from the Hyperledger Global Forum are now posted. This playlist is at the hyperledger.org, and there's great stuff in here. We recommend people see. You'll see Alex's presentation on the guts of Indy. That's really useful. You'll see Mike Lauder and Brent Zundel talking about Ursa. You'll see architecture presentation from Daniel Hardman at Evernym on how to do decentralized protocol development. So that's all really great. Evernym, I've been helping curate the Evernym YouTube channel. I have a playlist in here called Employees, where I've tried to pull in the Evernym employees stuff. And I also, employees here. And I also have one called Partners. We had a number of partners presenting at the Hyperledger Global Forum. I pulled their videos there as well. So if everything in the Global Forum is great, but if you want to just see the Evernym Sovrin identity sessions, you can go through these two playlists and get some of that. Alex, anything else we want to say about Indy Node?
I think that's all. Thank you for a good summary.
Oh, I forgot, when we were talking about slowing development, focusing on other things, that means we're going to move from, we've been maintaining a monthly release cadence pretty much. we're going to move to every other month. Maybe even every third month, maybe once a quarter. Currently, we think we're going to have a release every other month. So we skip February, we're going to do March. Next one we'll expect in May. And of course, if somebody contributes something, we'll do a release quicker. But we don't want to spend the time doing release testing if it's not going to make a meaningful difference to the Indy community. So as long as we're focused, like Alex said, on the client tiers, we expect the Indy node releases to slow. Okay, let's go. Wrong board. Okay, that's still the wrong board. This Indy for healthcare, I don't even know who uses this board, but because I clicked it once, it shows up in my list, and I keep clicking it, and it won't go away because I keep clicking it. Anyway, Indy SDK. So you can see we do have a number of fixes. Our goal was as Sergey explained in the last sprint demo, our goal was to release an Indy SDK release at the end of February. We found a bug at the last minute. It took a week to fix. Then we figured, well, let's just put in a couple more things and call it the March release. So that release is done now. So 1.14.3 was released in CI/CD. It was tagged in GitHub, but it was not posted to GitHub as a release because it had a bug. Backwards compatibility would break, and that's obviously unacceptable. So we're almost done with the 1.14.4 release. What's the update on that, Sergey? How soon do we think that'll be blessed?
Well, we have a few more items to double check about backup compatibility, and I hope we can finish all this backup compatibility testing this week or early next week.
Excellent. And that's great. We don't have anybody specifically waiting on this release. There's no specific time frame we need to hit. So if we find a bug, we'll do the testing right. We're not in a rush. If we find a bug, we'll just fix it. But we do expect to get this out fairly soon. The big improvement here is that it's got a bunch of fixes to Aries interoperability for libVCX. And it has a couple new features in libVCX for the old Evernym protocols, which is connection reuse, which is a different approach than the Aries community is taking with the out-of-band RFC. We will harmonize those approaches. We're working with Stephen Curran to harmonize that. And it's also got a way to do proof reject, which is related to the way that we do the NAC response in the Aries RFCs. And then it does structured messaging, which is very similar to the Aries RFCs question answer protocol. So it's a way that we're backporting Aries RFC protocol benefits to Evernym customers who haven't yet started using Aries. That's the goal there. And we did that all in the open source. A couple of things that we got a number of bug fixes as well into the SDK. But like I mentioned, most of our focus has been on the Aries shared libraries. So we've got there's an Indy VDR where they took the verifiable data registry out of libindy, and Andrew at BC.gov, Andrew Whitehead, pulled that out into a separate library. We want to make libindy wrap it so that all of our existing tests work and we can stress test that separate library and people can start using it in production and it makes it easy to transition. So that involves backporting some stuff and improving it in general. As Alex mentioned, we're also working on rich schemas. Those will go into both the Indy VDR and it will go into the Indy Credential Exchange Library and the Aries Credential Exchange Library. We've been working with Mike Lauder on that. URSA's most recent release includes signatures, which can allow us to remove a dependency on libsodium. We've been testing to make sure that performs as intended, and that'd be great to remove a dependency. Sergey, do you have an update on the status of that one?
Well, it was detected that not all functionality used from Sodium are implemented in URSA, so we are a bit blocked on this task.
That makes sense. So we're going to have to work with the URSA community, given that feedback. And this is a nice to have. It's not required, so we'll be able to put that on the shelf until URSA's improved. And we already talked about VCX protocol compatibility, a couple bug fixes. So that's the goal with Indy. We'll have the March release. That's the goal with the Indy SDK. Going forward, again, our main focus is really on the VDR and the and the rich schema work, we need to start working on revocation too as well. That's going to be our main focus. So expect fewer changes to libindy. We do want to go back and create RFCs for some of these things we submitted in the past, but that's the main goal there, is to work on these shared libraries, the Aries key management service, things like that. The best way to collaborate with us on that is to join the Indy contributors call, which happens every other Monday. That's where we work with all the other contributors. Highly recommend you attend that, as well as to join the Aries working group calls. Those happen every other Monday in the European overlap time zone, North America and Europe overlap, and every week in an American time zone, America afternoon. So that's the updates. Did I miss anything, Sergey?
Trying to find my mute button. I think it's excellent summary. Thank you.
Excellent. So we do want to keep, we appreciate the feedback we get from people. As long as these videos are benefiting people, we'll keep doing them, even though we're a bit following a bit more collaborative approach, which means less structured. So we'll keep posting this, expect another one in a couple of weeks. And if they're not being useful, then we'll change our format too. So we appreciate feedback people have. You can reach out to us, of course, in the calls. You can also reach out to us at chat.sovrin.org or chat.hyperledger.org. And of course, we hang out in the wiki and GitHub quite a bit too. So thank you, everybody, and we look forward to collaborating.